Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick. This is MSFS Flight Plans, and we are about to embark on what has thus far been the most challenging to put together and fly and navigate and produce video that we've done on this channel so far. But that is what makes it absolutely awesome. We are going to fly the length of the ruins of Hadrian's Wall across the central UK, going from west to east. And we're going to do it in the Mini 500, which we have not flown yet in 2024. But you're going to want to pay close attention to the front end of this because this will not be our typical flight plan. There's a lot of things I had to do and change to get this to work so you guys will be able to fly it. The wall is not easy to spot. And by the way, the thing that got me into checking this out was there was an add-on that I saw showcased in MSFS add-ons a couple weeks ago where someone who I think in the article they said they were historians and presumably simmers had built an add-on that places Hadrian's Wall as it looked when the Romans built it inside the sim. So I was like, well, that's cool. We're definitely going to do that. Well, buy it, fly it. It'll be great. And then I read the description, and it's only for 2020. So naturally, I was super bummed out. So I decided to fly it in 2024 anyway, just to see what all there is to see. And I was reminded of how great the landscape looks out here, despite most of this not being photogrammetry. And there's actually quite a bit of the wall you can see. So I'm going to show you how to see what you can see, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun doing it. A couple of quick pointers about the plane selection. One, I would not take a plane at all for reasons you'll understand in a minute. But whatever you pick, make sure it has a really good field of view and that it is pretty nimble. You're going to be needing to fly pretty low and do some pretty tight maneuvering. So if you can fly helicopters, I would suggest that you do that. If you can't, I would suggest you start doing it because they're awesome. But maybe a nice bridge would be like one of the electric planes, like the Joby, we recently flew that, or the Midnight. And if you really want to take a plane, maybe something like the Optica or the Double Ender, if you have that, where you can just see down below you, in front of you would probably work too. So let's hop in and start her up, and then we'll take a look at little nav map, because I had to do that a little bit differently as well. Okay, battery on, fuel on, guard it, and get our beacon nav. We'll go ahead and turn the alternator on, fuel pump on, and fire her up. Okay, so let me show you what's going on with this flight plan. This, of course, will be included along with this bookmark file in the video description. If you don't have a little nav map and you don't have a way to track this, good luck. Get little nav map. It's free. It's easy. We've got tutorials for how to use it, how to bring all these files in. Just skim down through our older videos. You'll see how to do all this stuff. So you can see this is right through. They built this thing right across pretty much the center of the island here and at a very narrow point, which also happens to have some great landscape features that we'll see as we're going along. And they did build another one a little bit after this at the only other spot that's probably skinnier than this up by Glasgow up here. They built it a few years after this wall and then abandoned that one and came back down here. But this one was all earthwork, so I don't think there's too much of it left. This one was a bit more substantial. So the total distance here, I think the wall itself it's under 80 miles for sure, and the top speed on this is about 100 knots, so I'm thinking it'll probably be about a 45-minute flight. And here's how you're going to find this thing. Again, you're going to have a little nav map, or you're just not going to see very much of it at all. So the way that I drew this out, initially we got to come all the way up here because it doesn't start at the coast. It starts at this town of Bowness-on-Solway up here. And once we get to this town, starting from this waypoint right here, number 11, this flight plan will track directly over the wall. So if you're trying to load this up into autopilot or fly it over the top of the flight plan, you're going to be over the top of the wall. So if you're in a helicopter, this one doesn't matter because we're sitting in the center of it. You could be on the north side or the south side. But in a typical rotorcraft, if you'd be sitting on the right, you're going to want to fly a little bit north of it so you can look out your window and see it pretty well without having to look across the cockpit. If you decide to take a plane, you're going to want to fly it on the south of it, assuming it's a standard configuration and you're sitting on the left-hand side, or else you'll be on the wrong side and won't be able to see it at all. So again, the Double Ender would probably be great if you really want to take a plane if you have that, or the Optica would probably work well. Other than that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's going to give you a good enough field of view other than the two electric plane/helicopters. So once you get out here, we're going to come over the top of this, of course, stay to the north of it. We're going to cruise down here, and you can VFR fly some parts of this. You're going to lose track of the wall many times, so as we're going through here, I'll give you some pointers for how to spot it. And as we're looking at things as we're flying by, sometimes it might be a road that you think is the wall. It might be just a path or an old driveway or hedges. You can see they got hedgerows everywhere out here. Of course, we are in the UK. So I'll give you some pointers for trying to find the ruins. And some parts of it will be really easy to see. Most of it will not. And you'll have some parts where it kind of comes along the coast here. That'll be easy to track. But then you get up here where it's just crossing through some fields, going through cities. Of course, there's nothing left in any of the cities. Hitting the rivers again. And I do also have the Orbix UK Landmarks pack. This is the Central pack, which I would get all three of those if I was you, if I were you, if you like flying around the UK, because they add so much stuff out here. But for this one, if you don't have it, you only miss 2 or 3 things that we're going to be seeing on this flight. So we'll hit all these old fort ruins and things like that, and then once we get up here, I want to draw your attention to this. If you load in the bookmark file, you're going to see I put these 2 X's in here. once you get out here, there's something going on with the sim, not with a map, that really jacks up the scenery in a rectangle that looks about like that. At least it was doing that for me. And I don't know why, because the Bing maps look fine when you're flying it. It's just something going on with the sim. And it was fine for my first 5 or 6 test flights, but on the last 2, it started glitching the sim, and then I got a crash to desktop. So I'd be interested if you guys fly this whole thing, look for these 2 marks, see if you're having any problems out there. But what I'm going to do this time, so we don't ruin the whole flight, since I think it's just a local issue I'm having, I'm going to check out somewhere right around here, just fade to black, and then we'll come back right on the other side over here. And then we'll just finish the flight, because I don't want that to ruin the whole thing for that tiny little 1-mile stretch in the middle there. Once we get to Newcastle upon Tyne, which I'll just call Newcastle from here on out, this is the only photogrammetry area on the flight. All the rest of the landscape looks really, really good with the exception of that. But then all the way over here, the wall actually ends right there. I'll come back to that in a second. The photogrammetry ends at a line like right here. So everything on this side's photogrammetry, everything on this side is not, and it looks really bad. The landscape, the structures, everything looks really bad. But there is one more fort that is very important to the wall that I'll tell you about, and then we'll look at it on the satellite map at the end when we're done. But we're not going to fly over there. It just looks so terrible. So what I'm going to probably do is just find one of these big open spots over here once we get to the end of the wall, and that's where we'll set her down. So again, the whole flight path all the way from Bowness-on Solway out to here is directly over the wall. After that, I just kind of drew it to out here if you want to try to look at it. And then I made our destination a helipad that you can select in the sim. Of course, you can't do it in little nav map yet. But this is actually pretty cool. It's at a big Nissan plant. They got a test track, and there's a little helipad right down there in the end of it. If you do want to connect it to an airport that you can select in the sim, we have one to the north of town. You'll have to backtrack a little bit to get back out there, or one to the south, but this one is really small. You could land there in the double ender for sure, but it's under 2,000 feet, and it's grass. So I don't know what that looks like. I didn't come down to that one. Our top speed in this thing is around 100 knots, so again, I think the flight will probably be 45, 50 minutes. And I'm going to try to fly it up until we get to the start of the wall around 1,000 feet, because I want to tell you about this airport we're starting at. There's another abandoned airport over here that's really cool. And then once we get out to the wall, I'm going to try to stay between 500 and 1,000 just because it'll make it a little bit easier to see it where we can see it as we're going along. So enjoy the flight, guys. I hope you really like it, and I really hope you'll try flying it. It is a lot of fun. It's like a giant treasure hunt, and of course there's just so much history and everything. I'm just getting the map reset over here, and I have to zoom way in so that we can see where we're going. So I was flying the Westland Scout before, as I mentioned, and boy, what a difference now. I hadn't flown the Mini 500 in 2024 yet, and you can really feel in this one, because it's so light, the more advanced flight dynamics for the helicopters. Let's turn that fuel pump off. It just feels light, and it's kind of tough to get trimmed out, so we're going to be a little squirrely until I get her squared away here, but after that, it should be nice and easy and smooth. And with that, if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and rock and roll. Up we go, nice and easy. I mean, it just feels light on the stick, which is cool, really cool. I think it feels more lifelike than it did in 2020. I wonder how much this thing weighs in real life. I bet it's not a lot. I do also have the map enhancement installed, if I didn't mention that, and this is the latest Bing map. It looks okay. It looks pretty good, really good, actually, with the default map. The only problem is, I thought the fields and the grass looked a little bit too light, like unnaturally light, and with the map enhancement, which is also free, you can change the coloration, darken it up a little bit, and I thought that looked a bit more realistic, so that's what we did. And that thing didn't have anything to do with the glitching, because it was doing that in the default map as well. So I don't know what's up with that, but we'll just skip that part once we get out there. Alright, let me try to circle around here. I'll tell you about this airport, and I'll jiggle all around as I try to get this thing squared away and trimmed out. This airport is called Kirkbride, and it was opened in 1939 at the very start of World War II for use as a maintenance facility. And the idea was that being way up here would be far enough away to avoid German attacks. And that was all well and good until a lone and very clever Luftwaffe pilot flying a Messerschmitt Bf-110, which looks almost identical to the British Hampton bomber, flew overhead. Look at this little thing on the ground right here, to the right. See, it looks like an arrow? We're going to see another one of those down by the coast, and I couldn't find any bookmarks on it to say what it was, but I'm guessing it was probably for some kind of wartime navigation, because we've seen a few of those around the UK. But as the German pilot approached, he lowered his gears and tipped his wings to mimic the approach procedures of an inbound aircraft. And then once he got close enough, he strafed the field and dropped 3 bombs on the place. So I think we definitely need to give that guy some serious props for pulling off a stunt like that. And then after the war, the base became an aircraft retirement home, eventually peaking out an astounding 1,206 residents in 1945. And then the RAF abandoned it in 1960, but today it is again in use for recreational pilots. Look over there to the right. I mean, even though these are default buildings, look at the little cars and stuff parked at all the shacks and sheds back behind those hangars. Looks pretty good, and of course the fields look just amazing. And again, with the default map, it was kind of light. So if yours are looking light, throw in that map enhancement, just dial it back a little bit, and it'll look like this. Look, you can see the piles of weed or hay or whatever that is down there. Amazing. And as we come around this point up ahead, we'll see the remnants of RNAS Anthorn, also built for World War II. And this was the receiving location for new planes coming right off the assembly line so they could get tested and ready for battle. And I read somewhere that down near the coast you can still see the berms that they would shoot the planes at, the guns on the planes to synchronize them. I didn't see any on my last flight, but we'll take a closer look this time because that's pretty cool. I'm guessing it would probably be on the side facing that big expanse of water because they certainly wouldn't be shooting them over here. That's a pretty slim hop right there to get back over the land. But today the site is used as a big radio transmission station, hence all these antennas out here. And look at this coastline up here. It looks so good. These coastlines look amazing. I did turn the wind down too. I knew this thing would be jerking all over the place. So I turned it back quite a bit. And I moved the month to June. Again, we're at the northern latitude, so this time of year, February, when I'm recording this, it gets a little bit dark. But as you can see, it looks good now. And just the usual disclaimer, I say usual, but I haven't made it in a while. I am not a professional historian. I fancy myself an armchair historian. So I don't know if everything I'm going to be telling you is correct. In fact, I would bet that a lot of it is not correct. Everything that I'm about to tell you, I have learned from several nights of looking around on the internet. Quite a bit of time spent on this one, more than any of our other flights. Look at those foundations and stuff down there. I'm just kind of skimming around for any berms that they might have been shooting the planes at. You can see the old runways down there. How cool is that? So if you are a historian and know more about this, or you're from the area and need to correct me on anything, I even try to get like the pronunciations right if I can find a video of someone saying these town names, just out of respect for the residents, but every now and then I get it wrong. So feel free to correct me in the comments. I have no problem with that as long as you can be civil about it. None of us like being wrong about stuff. That kind of looks like a little berm right there, but that seems really low. Right there behind those bushes. So in the off chance that you've never heard of Hadrian's Wall, I'll give you a real quick overview of it. They started building this thing in 112 AD under Emperor Hadrian, hence the name, to mark the boundary between Roman Britannia to the south and the wild and hostile Caledonian lands to the north. It was 73 miles long when complete, 8 feet thick, and most of it topped out at between 10 and 12 feet high. And though there are no longer any portions still standing at their original height, you can see quite a bit of the places where the foundations were, where it's not overgrown by bushes and shrubs and things like that. So we'll try to spot that where there is no standing wall. And what happened to that wall? Well, it went to build a lot of the houses, the old houses in all the towns that were stretched along the wall here. So I guess you still can see it, but that just looks like houses now. This body of water here is the Solway Firth, and on the other side of it is Scotland. And the first little town we're going to see on our right, after that little thing sticking out in the water up there, which I'll tell you about in just a minute, is Bowness-on-Solway, and that is where the wall starts. And this one does have no remnants remaining because, again, they did use all of what was above the ground to build the town. Nor does there appear to be anything left of a big Roman fort they called Maius, M-A-I-S, which means the larger. Although this one was actually the second largest on the wall, covering roughly 7 acres, which is pretty big. And not much is known about the types of soldiers they had stationed out here, but we do know the ranking officer was a tribune, indicating there were probably around 1,000 troops out here at what would become a Bowness-on-Solway. So that little thing sticking out from the right over there, that is the embankment of an old rail line that used to cross over to Scotland. It was called the Solway Viaduct and was a mile long when it was completed in 1869. But it was made out of wood, which didn't get along very well with chunks of ice floating around out here in the Firth. So they closed it down in 1921. But it's a cool little bit of history, and looks neat, so we'll check it out as we fly by. And man, guys, trying to map this thing out, it was so much fun. Very, very difficult. It's not like you can just Google Hadrian's Wall. It'll put something on the map, but it'll just take you to one little portion of it. Trying to find where this thing went back in the day was not easy. I had to get all kinds of old maps, compare them to satellite maps now, little nav map, trying to get it just right, and I'm still not sure I nailed it, especially where you can't see it. There's the embankment down there. Okay, so here comes the town, and I'm going to include a lot of videos in this one too in the description if you want to get some more information about these places. I can't remember if I found one for this or not. Well, I found it, but I don't know if it was good enough to post. And the way it's going to run from here, all right, you see where the town ends, and then the shore kind of comes out, and there's some hedges kind of coming off at a right angle from the town there, stretching across that field. I think that's where the remnants of the wall would be out here, and that's going to cut back towards the coast. And there's a walking path that goes along the whole length of this thing too. So right along those hedges right there, the first row of them, and you can kind of see a little bit of foundation there. See it? In between the hedges? And then I guess the third field up from, I can't use my pointer because I'm holding the collective and the cyclic. But one of those fields over there, it probably comes back over here to the coastline. Then it's going to hug the coast pretty close. And then from here, it will hug the coast for about 5 miles, passing by what would become the early 19th century town of Port Carlisle, which is that one right down there on the right. And that place got its start as the terminus of the Carlisle Canal, which brought goods to the coast from the town of Carlisle to the east, which we'll also see shortly. But the canal only lasted for about 30 years, being replaced by a rail line in 1854. And I'm guessing it's probably the same line that wound up crossing that viaduct back there. And up next is the town of Dumbruff and the former location of another Roman fort called Cagabata. And this one was relatively small. It had just 2 acres and was manned by soldiers from the central region of modern-day France. I'm not saying any of the wall down there, and you got to think that a lot of this has moved around in 2,000 years. Anything right along the coast, I'm just not sure if it would be standing. Okay, right there, that might be a segment. See it kind of bisecting that portion right there? I'm pretty sure that's a segment, because on the map, that's where it would cross. Coming across over there. It's just so many hedgerows out here. It's so hard to see. So here's Dumbruff. And if you look at it on the map, it looks like it might be Dumbra or Dunborough. But the locals call it Dumbruff. And right up here along the coastline, we're going to see another one of those arrows, this time pointing towards the water. And this one is a complete arrow, too. So if one of you are from around here, let me know what that was all about. Okay, where is it? We won't miss it. It's very obvious. There it is. It's about to come behind our pillar on the right. See it down there? And okay, you see the road? That next line closer to us, I think is probably wall foundation as well, on this side of the road. That's about the right spot where it would be. And if you're tracking this on a little nav map, and if you have the Mapbox satellite map installed, you'll see little indicators of sites called mile castles all along the wall route. Originally there were 80 of those in all, and those were very small barracks placed at the openings in the wall that would hold up to 30 soldiers. And in between each mile castle, there were 2 towers, so they would have been at every third of a mile, Roman mile. And they called those turrets, which would be manned by troops stationed at the mile castles. Okay, up next to our right is the town of Bruff by Sands, former home to the Abal Ava Roman fort. And that name means the apple orchard, but neither the orchard nor the fort remains today. And this emplacement is what I would call probably medium-sized, at around 5 acres, and it held Dutch and Belgian troops. And interestingly, the first unit of Africans in the Roman military was stationed out here. And perhaps even more interesting than that, that town is also where the legendary Longshanks himself, Edward I, died of dysentery in 1307. That's one for all you Braveheart fans. Alright, I'm just kind of looking off to the right. Yep, we're going to lose the wall a bit here. But it kind of follows that road there. And then over to that river just up ahead, River Eden. So once we get to the river, we're going to see the town of Beaumont, and in the center of town is St. Mary's Church, built in 1296. We won't be able to see it here, I'm just telling you about it because it's kind of neat. And they built that on the site of a turret from the wall, which ran directly beneath where that church stands today. And after that, we're going to fly east to Kirk Andrews on Eden, followed by Grinsdale, and then we'll follow the river to the city of Carlisle. Look at these fields. Just amazing. This is a tricky spot right here, guys. Make sure you're paying attention to the little nav map, or you're going to miss this first town where the wall comes back over. And I think coming into the wall, or coming into the town, we're going to see the wall. Okay, see what looks like a double line of hedges over there between those 2 brown fields? Not the first one next to us, the next one up. There's like a double line. Follow that right up into the center of town. I think that is also the foundation of the wall running up through there. And then from here, it's going to get really close to the right-hand coastline of the river, and I couldn't spot anything of it. You see down there on the right side of the town? I couldn't spot anything of the wall coming down here. It may just be buried in all those trees if there's anything left. So hugging the river, that might be a little spot on the bend there. But again, I mean, just think about how much the Mississippi River moves around. In this thing over 2,000 years, you know it's been going all over the place. But it probably wouldn't move the wall. So if the wall was kind of acting as a southern embankment, it would have stuck there. Let's see if we can see another wall segment coming into the town up here. Yep, I think we can. See just underneath our pillar there? That's probably another segment coming into this side of town. And you can see it kind of runs away from it there, getting a little bit bendy. I bet that's it. And this one's also going to hug the river right around this part up here. So we're coming up on the town of Carlisle now, which was a major support village for the wall forts. But being so close to the border with Scotland, it remained an important stronghold for England even after the Romans left, getting its very own castle in 1093, which you can still visit today, and we'll see in just a minute. And one thing you'll notice, if you look up ahead of us there, is that big chimney sticking up in the air. You'll only see that if you have the Orbix pack installed. That's the massive Dixon's chimney, and it is nearly 300 feet tall. But what's really incredible is that it was built in 1836 as part of a big cotton mill. That just seemed like something that was really tall for that period to me. And then over to the left of that, at the end of that little green space there, that's going to be the castle down there. But even after the Romans left around the 1500s, this was a hotly contested area between the Scots and the English, leading to a group of locals called the Reivers, who decided to just take care of themselves instead of relying on either of the crowns to defend them. And they were quite a nuisance to pretty much everybody, including the church, which prompted the Archbishop at the time, a guy named Gavin Dunbar, to issue the mother of all curses in 1525. You should read that thing if you get a chance. Man. Okay, so this is a tough little area. It's a really tight turn, and the wall kind of goes towards the row running through that residential area there, that road. And we're going to cross back over the top of it. You really can't see anything out here, so I don't know exactly where it would be, but we're going to cross back over it, so it'd be slightly to our left right now. We're probably just about to fly right over it, wherever it would have been. And in just a minute, we're going to see the airport up here on our right. Okay, this part is very, very tricky, guys. Alright, so here's how we're going to get ourselves back on course, because there are no markers of any kind. Directly ahead of us, you see that straight edge running along the right side of those brown fields. If you go to the right, there's a big square of green fields, and then up in the far right-hand corner, there's another brown field. The wall is running between the right-hand side of that green field, on the right-hand side of all the green fields, and the left-hand side of the brown field, and it's going to run directly to the right side from here, which would be the southern side of that little set of farm buildings or whatever that is down there. So if you could see anything, it would probably be running right along those hedges between the green field and the brown field. And there is a hedgerow running all the way down back here, but again, if there's anything to see, it'd be covered by those trees. Look at all the tractor marks in these fields. Incredible. Let's see if we can spot anything. And now we're going to be along the road, so it is going to be hugging this road for a bit. I mean, it looks like there could be a wall down in there, but you just don't know. Not from here. These fields just look amazing. I love England. England has done, the Sim did a great job with all the fields in England. So that's where it would be. I think it's going to be running along this road for a little while here. But you got to make sure you get back on track here, or you'll be way off course. So we're going to start heading northeast, and then we're going to see the Carlisle Airport up on our right. And this was also built for World War II. You can see the runway over there. Serving first as a training facility for Hawker Hurricane pilots, and then a transport base for Douglas Dakotas. Today it's general aviation and home to the Solway Aviation Museum up on the northeastern corner of the complex. So you see on the runway, you can't see anything from here. On the satellite map, if you can remove the airport, you can see all the planes that got parked out there. But that little area to the left of the other end of the runway is where the museum is. Okay, so I think that is probably wall down there, that little white stretch. All right, let me point something out to you guys. This is going to be very, very helpful. We're going to start to see these ditches. They look like parallel ditches that will always be on the southern side or the right-hand side of the wall. We saw a few of them. They'll be much more pronounced here in a little bit. But those are called vallums, and they ran almost the entire length of the wall, running anywhere between a couple hundred feet behind it to up to 2,500 feet behind it. And no one is really sure what those were for. They think it might have either been an additional defense, because they went up around the same time they built the wall up north by Glasgow, sorry, for you Scots out there. There's that museum would be, in that open area right there. So they don't know if it was just, when they abandoned this wall to go up north, if they just added that in case they had to fall back, which they did. But some other people think they may have been trying to demark like a no-go zone for civilians. Like, do not cross this, don't get any closer to the wall. In just a minute, we're going to see a big patch of trees up here on our right. It's that dark spot just to the right of our center bar up there. It doesn't look like much of anything in the sim, but we'll check it out at the end. That was the site of a Roman fort called Camboglana, and it was set back about 1,500 feet from the wall because they wanted to put it on top of the hill that sits on over there. so they could get a good view of the landscape. But that one was square in shape and roughly 400 feet on each side, and it sounds like there may have been a good bit of it still standing when someone built a big mansion just to the south of it in the 1700s. But unfortunately, they destroyed what was ever still on the ground in the process. Yeah, it's those trees over on the right. Yeah, that structure there is probably the mansion that they built, and then over to the left of that is where the fort would have been, but it's totally obscured by trees. You can see it really well on the satellite map, though. We'll check it out. And this next town up ahead of us on our right is Walton, with a population of around 300. And it's called Walton because it is a town that was built right on top of the wall. And to the east of town, there are still parts of the wall that are standing, but they buried them to preserve what's left. So if you could see anything, it would look like a big long stretch of mound on the turf. And I don't think we can see anything in the sim. Being the fan of Time Team that I am, if you've never watched that series, you've really not lived yet, in my opinion. I've always been fascinated by the incredibly advanced society and culture of the Romans while they were out here. Those guys were building massive and highly sophisticated roads, towns, villas all over the place. That might be a little mound down there on the side of that road there. And once they left, it seems like everything reverted almost back to the Stone Age until the end of the Middle Ages for England. The church and royalty was still doing all right, but I bet the life of the average citizen was probably far better with the Romans than without them. And in case you didn't know it, Julius Caesar took a crack at invading in 43 BC, but failed. The second attempt under Emperor Claudius did the trick, however, when he came back in AD 43. And they stayed all the way up into the early 400s, but had to pull everyone back to defend the homeland as the empire fell apart. Which itself is an incredible story if you have the time and inclination to look into that. Still looking for wall pieces and vellum. And these guys like to build them right on the top of the highest pieces of ground anywhere, so you can see that row of hedges and trees going over the top. Oh, and it looks like there may even be a segment of wall right there. See it coming over the top of that mountain? Yep, I bet that's it. There's tractor marks in these fields. That's crazy. So we're coming up on the location of a fort called Banna, and it was one of the best preserved of the original 16 forts and sits between the longest stretches of an earlier turf wall that predated the stone version by about 50 years. And the fort's garrison was raised by Hadrian himself and consisted of troops from the region where Romania is today. And the guys from the Time Team said they probably relocated the wall a little bit further north. As you're going to see, it kind of sits on the edge of a cliff, which will fall off to the right. And they think that's why they moved the wall up this way a little bit, because it was falling off the side of that cliff into the River Irthing. You won't miss this one, but you're going to want to know when to look for it, so I'll show you how to spot this one too. It's going to be in between two big brown fields. Up ahead. And there's a couple, if you look down to the right, occasionally you'll catch a glimpse of the remains of the turrets and the mile castles. Sometimes they actually look like ruins, and sometimes they just look like a half-submerged building. So when you see something that looks just like a roof sticking up with nothing else, that was probably a mile castle. Okay, so this fort is going to be just on the other side of these fields up here, and that big cliff hanging off to the right is where the wall was originally running, and then they moved it forward a little bit as pieces of it were probably falling off the back end of it up there. So when you get out to this area, I feel like the fields, even despite me turning it, if I turned the colors down anymore, it would look way too green. You wouldn't see any texture, but once you get out here, they still look a little bit light. Okay, so right between these two brown fields up here on the right is where you will see the walls of the Banna Fort. We'll take a nice look at it. You can even see where the gatehouses were and everything. But see how it's sitting on that cliff like that? There it is. So on the left-hand side, you can see where the gatehouses were, and you can even see something that looks like ruins there behind those structures. Look at that. Boy, and it's right on that cliff, too. How cool is that? Awesome. Oh, okay, see right down there in that field on the right? That is the end of a Roman bridge that used to cross that valley right there. And you can even see the remains of a little turret there, that little square thing. And it's going to get a lot easier to see the wall for a little bit now, because we're about to come up on a big stretch of hills that cross the landscape. So it won't be too tough to see it. And there it is, crossing over to the right of the town of Gilsland. And we might barely be able to see the faint outline of the former location of Magnus Fort that's going to be up here on the right. Well, they're all going to be on the right, of course. And look at this, looking off in the distance there, you can start to see more of the vallum. See those little ditches? So when you see those, you know wherever the wall is, it's going to be to the left of those. But this fort is set back about 1,000 feet south of the wall, and that's because it was there before the wall. It's another one that's really easy to miss, so I'll tell you how to spot it. But it was built around 80 AD, which would have been roughly 40 years before the wall, at a spot at the intersection of two major Roman roads that came through the area. And it wasn't small either. Archaeologists think it was probably about 8 acres, which would have been bigger than all of the wall forts. And it also held a regiment of 500 archers, the only one we're aware of in all of Britain, which is a bit peculiar. Okay, so it's going to be up here on the right, behind the vallum in this case. Alright, see that little building right up there in the corner of our two beams, the center beam and the right beam? That's actually a Roman museum. And then off to the corner of that square thing there in the field, that's the outline of the fort. Not much. There you go, you've seen it. So now we're going to start crossing over this very interesting formation here called the Whin Sill, W-H-I-N. That's not the wall to the left, by the way, there. They always built it on the highest point, so the wall's going to be up along this ridge here. And this stretches for a pretty good ways in the distance, so now it's going to be a little bit easier to find it. Just find the highest point around, and the wall is going to be sitting on top of it. And look how nicely textured all this is. All little rocks and stuff down there. Let's see how close we can get to it. And if you look close, you'll be able to spot some of the places where the turrets and the mile castles were. We'll see if we can see any as we're coming through here. And man, guys, I'm going to have to take a few shorty flights after this. I mean, I really enjoyed doing this one because it was a lot of fun and very interesting, but I don't like to keep you guys hanging for a whole week if I can avoid it. Just looking for remnants of mile castles. So I got a few spots in mind that I'd like to check out. Oh, no, that's a structure. Okay, right there on the edge of this building right here, that's our next fort. It's called Asica, or known today as Great Chesters. And you can see the outline of that one. You can see the gatehouse too. Check that out. So that one's kind of easy to spot because there's that big building there. And that one was built about 10 years after the wall and on top of a pre-existing mile castles. Researchers think it was probably upgraded to guard the gap in the wall just to the east where that little river cuts down from the north. And then here we are on the Great Whin Sill again. I wonder why it's called that. But what a cool natural feature, huh? I did not know something like this existed up here in Britain. And because we're so far away and so remote from so many towns, that's probably why any of the wall is still standing. They weren't pulling it down to build all the little towns and stuff. And look up there, you can see the vallum back behind it at the base of the little ridge there. Very clearly out here. Yeah, where there weren't a lot of people, a lot of it remains. And man, how cool would it be to take the walk along this path for the whole distance. Kind of like the Appalachian Trail of the UK. Look how it comes up on the top of this ledge here. And it's just amazing that there hasn't been more erosion that has crumbled it over 2,000 years. If we're a little bit higher, some of those rocks look a little bit flat. They do look good though from here. And I was kind of wondering, you're going to see some of these lakes up here. A few of them are remains of old quarries. And I was really hoping that they might have been Roman quarries, but I think most of them are far more recent than that. Like 1800s. Right before the edge of this lake up here, there's going to be a little gap in the ledge. And that is the former site of a 150-year-old sycamore tree known as the Robin Hood tree, after it was featured in the 1991 Robin Hood movie. Well, some vandals cut it down in 2023, and the good news is they caught them and they left the stump. So the thing is still alive. But they say it's going to take another 150 years for it to return to its former glory. So there's the gap right there. And that building there with just a roof, that would have been another mile castle. That's what they look like. We're going to see another one up here too. So the next fort is going to be the Vercovicium, the best preserved of them all, including the best preserved ancient latrines. I would definitely stop by just to see that. And they also found the ruins of a huge civilian settlement called a vicus to the south, which was common to all these forts considering there was good money to be made supporting these garrisons. But in this case, archaeologists made a very interesting discovery that they called a murder house. As they were excavating it, they found two skeletons that appeared to have been placed directly beneath a floor right before it was laid, which is both creepy and awesome. Alright, down here on the right, see that roof right there? That is probably another mile castle, and that's what they look like if they don't get modeled as ruins. And then here comes the fort right after here. And this one looks great. Unfortunately, they made some of the ruins into modern buildings. But look at that, you can see the gatehouses on the corners there, you can see where the towers would have been. How awesome is that? Okay, just keep following our ledge here. And though there's nothing left of it, I'll show you the spot where the Brocolida fort once stood. That's going to be our next one. They say you can still see some of the earthworks from the ground, but I couldn't spot anything. But one thing that is still out here, albeit very small, is a temple to Mithras that was built along the southern perimeter within 100 years of the fort's completion. And what's interesting about that is that sanctuaries for that particular god were usually built to look like caves. So they actually dug the thing into the ground and had to uncover it to find it. So what you're seeing now, above ground, would have been something that was underground when they originally built it. I thought that was pretty cool. And there's that vallum. Look at that, just running all the way off in the distance there. And I couldn't figure out why in some areas, although I didn't notice any because they're too far off the beaten path, why they would have built it so far, as much as 2,000 feet back away from the wall. Maybe just because it was up against a mountain or something. But that's interesting. And there was originally a road that ran all the way behind it. Now that road there is called Military Road, and portions of that are probably where the old Roman road originally was as well. And the wall, I'm not sure if that line to the right of the road or the left of the road is the wall. I'm going to guess it's on the left because it looks like we have more of the vallum over here on this side of the road. That might be the walking path over on the right side there. Alright, let's see if we can find this thing. Oh, that's definitely vallum. Look at that. Yep, so the wall was probably the thing on this side of the road. Boy, once you get this helicopter stabilized, it just flies like a dream. It's just that initial getting up and down that's real touchy with this thing. Okay, so this fort, see that little dip right up there ahead that runs across the road? It's going to be right on the other side of that, and then down by the trees on the right, you'll kind of see the outline of the fort, I guess. That's what those field marks are. But that little tiny building down on that southern corner there is where the temple to Mithras was. There it is. And it doesn't look like that in real life. We'll check it out on the satellite map. They just made it a little structure of some kind. But not much left of the fort. Interesting that the... Well, I guess the only reason why that temple stood is because it was buried. And this is interesting to me, too. It looks like someone built a field up over this ledge here, and I'm guessing that thing cutting across it is the remnants of the wall, which they would have just left. But imagine trying to plow that thing at an angle like that. Holy smokes. Alright, the last big fort complex that we're going to see before we get to Newcastle, and we're going to check out before that because I don't want to hit that nasty spot in the sim. Look at that thing. Wow, that looks really cool. That's got to be a farm field, right? That is neat. It's called the Calurnum, this fort is, and is considered the best preserved fort along the wall that was cavalry specific. And unfortunately, the ruins for this one got modeled as buildings in the sim, which is a total bummer, but we'll check it out at the end. And I'll also include a video of this one. I know I got a video of this one from the ground in the description for this flight. And they put this one out here to guard a bridge that crossed the North Tyne River behind the wall, and you can still see the foundations of that bridge on the other side of it today. I'll show you where they are. And thanks to some inscriptions on an altar they found down there, we know the troops stationed out here were from the present areas of Bosnia and also some from Germany. And that's another thing that just blows my mind. Today it doesn't seem strange at all to have soldiers from one country stationed all over the world, but this was 2,000 years ago. To think of the logistics involved in something like that, never mind building this wall and all the roads, and all the coordinated conquest happening at the same time, all happening while the only form of information transfer was sending riders on horseback. Okay, so that big open area right down by the water there is where the fort would have been. And then right on the other side of it, I'll tell you when it comes to view just now, there's a tiny little line coming down the river. That's where the bottom of the bridge would have been. And you can get lost here easily, so just look for the vallum. You can see it stretching off in the distance there. We're going to lose the wall here for a while, a good while. We may not see much of it from here on out, but we can still see the vallum, so just track that. And I don't know what's up with that road down there. You can see it kind of got covered over with some green stuff, and every now and then you see the road peeking out. Very odd. Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead and stop here. I don't want to get too close to that bad area because I don't want to risk this thing crashing. There's a little wall segment, see right down there? Just one little tiny piece. Running by the vallum. So when we come back, we will be on the other side of the nastiness and we'll wrap up our flight. See you guys in a minute. Okay, we have crossed the abyss, and you can still see a few glitches out here on the landscape, which seems to be getting worse every time I fly over it. Let me know if you guys are seeing that too when you come out here. I don't know what's going on with that, but it seems to be like a spreading infection. I hope it doesn't get any further than this little spot on the map. That'd be terrible if it started showing up in other parts of the world. But just ahead on the right, we're going to see a little clump of buildings amidst some trees that are covering the former site of the Vindobala Fort. And that one was built to guard the valley back behind us. And this one was also a cavalry fort, and one interesting feature about all of those, the ones built for horsemen, is that they made them protruding out to the north side of the wall. The others didn't. They stayed back behind the wall, and they did that so everyone could get out really quickly when they got the call that it was time to ride. Look at these little squares and rectangles down here. And all of this from here to the end is going to be photogrammetry. And just for good measure, since I had to pause anyway, there it is right down there on the right. That's where the fort would have been. Nothing left but some houses. And it kind of makes you wonder how they found out it was down there. Someone was digging a hole in their yard, maybe? Found a foundation? I bet that's how they did it. So everything from here on out, photogrammetry. I dialed the graphics down just a little bit since I could take a break, so hopefully we won't get any stuttering. And the wall from here is going to follow this little narrow road to our right. Well, where it would have been. And we may even see a couple little chunks of it still sticking out, but then it's going to catch up to this thoroughfare here on the left. But I did remember when I was flying here before, I did see a couple little chunks peeking out, so I'm going to keep my eyes down there to see if we can spot anything. And as we head into Newcastle, we are going to lose track of the route amongst all the roads and the buildings, so I'll just tell you a little bit about the town and mention a few wall facts as we're cruising along. That's probably a little piece right there. See it? Next to the road on the right? And one thing that's kind of curious to me is why the Romans didn't just use the River Tyne as the barrier. You'll see it cuts right through the middle of the city, and it's definitely wide enough to stop anyone from cutting across. And goes all the way to the North Sea from here. You can see it off there to the right. But for some reason they built about 10 miles of wall running just to the north of it. But I guess if nothing else, we can sleep soundly knowing that government waste isn't just a modern problem. The first settlement that we're aware of out here did belong to the Romans, who called it Pons Aelius, which means alien bridge. No, not that kind of alien. There's an extra E stuck behind that first A. But Alien was Emperor Hadrian's family name, and the bridge and the town was named after him. At the start, the town was mostly just a little wall fort and the supporting civilian structures that popped up around it, and at its peak, the population numbered about 2,000, if we lump everybody, the civilians and soldiers together, which is still pretty good size for back then, I suppose. Okay, so I think up here where these two roads kind of converge, it's going to switch over to running along the main thoroughfare. Still just looking for any wall segments. I know for sure we'll be able to spot some by this big roundabout up here. But the site of that original fort is at the current site of the medieval castle, simply known as the Castle. But it's not really the castle for Newcastle. That one was a new castle built where the Roman fort was, and that's how Newcastle got its name. So the castle, we'll see shortly, isn't actually the new castle, though it's the newest on that spot. Good luck unraveling all that. But I'm pretty sure I stated it accurately. Okay, so just on this side of this roundabout, and then again on the other side, we should see some wall segments. It's going to be just to the right of the main road here. There's a little segment right there. See it right by the road? And then right on the other side of the roundabout, that's probably another little segment right there on this side of those bushes. And there's the other little segment. Pretty faint, isn't it? Boy, this is a great-looking city, and the performance seems to be pretty good, too. After the Romans left, the area became part of the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Northumbria, and after that, once old Willie the Conqueror did his thing, the Normans were in charge. In fact, William's son is the one who built the namesake castle in 1080, but that's not the one that's out here today. The castle was built by Henry II in 1172, which still makes it pretty dang old. But the place exploded during the Industrial Revolution, pioneering innovations in the fields of shipbuilding, steam engines, steam turbines, food processing, and electric lighting. In fact, Newcastle was one of the first cities on the planet to get electric lights. And today, based on everything I was exploring online, it looks like it would be a really cool place to visit. We're getting just a little bit of stuttering here, not too bad. That giant stadium up there is St. James Park, home of Newcastle United. They opened that area up for the first time in 1892 and updated it several times since then, most recently in 2000. And it holds just over 50,000 people, so that's a pretty big place, as if you couldn't tell, and it looks great here in the sim. I think that's a POI. Okay, so to see the castle, again, it's just called the Castle. We're going to look at these bridges down here on the right, all of which are also POIs and look fantastic. And then we're going to see one with something that is running parallel with the river. in between it. The castle is right behind our center bar right now. I'm going to try to slow down and look at it out of the left side of the helicopter because it's kind of in a shadow here. Now it's just right in the crosshairs there. And you'll see this big cathedral off to the left too, which also looks fantastic. Alright, see that little red bridge? It's kind of pointing at it on this side. See it right down there? It just came on the other side of our bar, of our pillar, with the 4 towers on the sides of it. That's where the original fort was. Pretty neat looking out. Look at that cathedral. Oh, this looks great. That thing on the right side is called the Glass House. That's a big performing arts place they built in 2004. Man, this is a good-looking city. There's another big church right there next to our console. Okay, so let's see here. How do we catch back up to the wall? Okay, see that bridge crossing over there, the freeway bridge? It kind of follows that, and then it splits off to make like a little bow-shaped road to the side there. We'll stay on the main road. That's where the castle's going to go. And then we'll see our final fort up here in the town of Wallsend. Or you could say Wall's End, because that's where the wall ended. And this one's called the Segadunum. And since this is photogrammetry, I think we'll probably be able to see all the excavations. They should look pretty good. But originally the wall ended back by the castle. They extended it out here a few years later, and historians believe that may have been to offer a little bit more protection for the bridge that was out there by the castle. As we make our way out there, a couple of quick announcements, since we haven't made it in the last couple flights. Again, the flight plan and the bookmarks will be included in this. You'll definitely need it to bring it into the little nav map. If you don't know how to use that, look for our tutorials several videos back, or just go to the how-to section of our page. And if there's a spot that you think we just got to check out, you should join our Discord server. That will also be linked. And if you get in there, go down to the left-hand side of the page. There's a suggest a flight section. Just let me know. Even an area is fine. But if you have a couple airports you want me to fly between or some landmarks, let me know that too. And if we upload the flight, you will be entered in our quarterly flight plan competition. At the end of the quarter, I will upload the flights that we selected, and we'll vote as a sim community. The winner will get a $75 gift card to the sim vendor of your choice. Okay, there's a little pier coming off to the left here. Right, that pier, see it right above our center bar there, down in the corner? That's pointing right at the fort, and we can just start to see the ruins of it here above our center bar on the right. So we'll cruise around here, and I'm going to look for a landing spot, because we don't want to go too much further, or we'll get to the end of the photogrammetry. I'm honestly pretty surprised this looks this good. A lot of the cities in England don't look all that great for photogrammetry. This one looks really, really nice. There's the ruins. And man, I bet all the... Look at that. The cars down there look great. Love it, love it. It looks like we may have some filled-in cranes over there in the distance, but at least you can tell they're cranes. That's it. So from there, the wall would have just gone right to the water. Okay, let's see. That big warehouse, or whatever that is up there, looks pretty cool. Oh, it looks like it might be... That reminds me of General Dynamics in Groton, Connecticut, where they build the submarines. That looks like a couple submarine hulls sticking out there. The warehouse looks like it too. But I don't think they're maybe they're building subs out here. I bet most of the work they do is for pipeline stuff and oil drilling. Because that's the North Sea off there in the distance. Look at that ship in the dry dock right in front of us. Yeah, love that. Yeah, the cranes are a little bit filled in. Let's get a little bit closer, see what we got down here. Of course, everything's going to start to look a little bit jagged as we get closer, but that's fine. Look at those two tubes sticking out there. That is cool. Alright, and it's going to be a little bit of a tight squeeze to come in right between that building and the water, so we'll come down a little further. I see that circular area down there. We'll try to hit that. And I love when you can see the writing on the sides of the building. Look at that right down there. SMD. Really neat. What are those things? You know, I've never seen what an oil pipeline looks like out of the water. Maybe that's how big they are. You know, they're probably moving a lot of oil. Well, those cranes aren't filled in. Alright, I gotta concentrate. And again, in 2024, the way you can see down into the water when you get close, I don't know if that's what it looks like or not, but I really like that. Adds some legitimate depth to the water. Really neat. Yeah, getting this baby under control at low speeds, especially when you get down to hovering and trying to descend and trying to get it retrimmed for landing, it's definitely a little bit twitchy because it's so light, but I like that. And someone asked me not too long ago what I thought a good starting helicopter would be. And again, that Westland Scout, because it's so heavy and slow moving, or the Wasp, which I don't think you can get yet in 2024, I think that would probably be a good starter because it's very, very forgiving. This one's nice because it's simple, but it's just so touchy at low speed, especially in 2024. All right, I'm thinking about my flight lesson with Jeremy. He said just come on down and let it surprise you when you touch the ground. So I'm just trying to look off in the distance here, not look at the area I'm trying to land. Just kind of getting a feel for what I need to adjust. And I'm hoping I'm going to be real surprised when it touches down. See if we can hit that little ground effect zone here. Easy does it. Easy does it. Stay in the distance, Nick. Don't look at the ground. Don't you dare look at the ground, Nick. There we go. Okay, well, we made it. Fantastic. So I think the easiest way to do this will be just shutting the fuel off. And we hit the rotor brake. And let's take a look at this incredible journey that we've had here. All right, take the centering off, get rid of our tail. Let's start all the way back at the beginning. So there's the airport we left from. They got strafed by the Luftwaffe pilot. Incredible. And here, let's see if we can see these berms now where they were testing the machine guns, getting them synced up. Boy, this is a terrible map compared to the one we had. Look at this. Really rough. Well, that's too bad. So if you want to see this stuff better, open up the Google map or one of the Bing maps. They're a lot clearer. This one, unfortunately, in this region is not great. So there's Royal Navy Air Station Anthorn with all its big antennas. So if you think about it, I mean, if they had the plane shooting at a berm somewhere, certainly wouldn't be going this way and not that way because there's stuff up there too. It had to be somewhere around here, but I just didn't see anything when we were flying by, which is fine. There's our little viaduct for the railway. Let's see if there's anything on the other side of the river. Oh, there is. Look at that. So you cruise over and check. God, this is a terrible image. Okay, well, maybe we'll look at this stuff a little further away. So here's where the wall started, and I was saying it kind of comes at a right angle away from the town there, and there was that hedgerow coming out there, so that's probably where it came across. And I was thinking maybe it was one of these running over towards the shore, but you can see it takes more of an angle, but I don't think there was anything that looked like the wall around there, so it's probably completely gone. And then we came to the Port Carlisle area, and down here we definitely saw this segment right here. It cut right across this area right here, and I think that thing we were looking at was the wall piece, and we know that because there's the remains. Well, there's nothing left there, but there would have been a mile castle right there, so you know that was right on the wall, so that was probably it. We pointed that out as we came by. And here's where the Kogabata Fort was. These are wild names, aren't they? Nothing left of that at all. There's our arrow. Amazing. Let us know what that is if you know. And then this is just kind of weird. I don't know if I was right in this area here, but I thought as we were coming by that might have been the wall there. That's pretty close. So that was probably accurate as we were coming by there, just behind the arrow. And then we came over to a place where there's another fort. This one was the Abalava Fort. Also nothing left of that. Came on down here to the River Eden and cruised into Carlisle. And here's where that huge chimney is. And you can find it because there's a shadow for it. Look at that. And then here's the castle, which looked pretty cool. Ooh, and I was kind of wondering if it was modeled darker than it really is, but it does look pretty dark. So that might have been accurate. Neat place. Built in the early 1000s, very early 1000s. And this was a tricky spot here, guys. Again, so when you're coming off this, just get heading along this main road that kind of runs up by this neighborhood. You'll see this off in the distance. Just stay to the left of that. There will be none of the wall that you'll be able to find. But around this point is where I started pointing out those fields up ahead. So this is where you'll be able to spot those. And it's going to run just on this side. In the sim, this was all really green, and this one was brown. So that's what we're looking at in the sim. This whole area was super green. There were some brown fields on this side, but if you look at the brown field over here, these will all be really green. And then this little set of buildings, the wall ran right up through there. And from there, just look for the runway of the airport. You'll be able to spot that. And then once you get just a little bit past that, let's see if there's any remains of those mile castles. Nope. And that's in a field. Definitely nothing there. And here's where the Aviation Museum is, which we can probably see because we didn't stop at that airport. If we were on a better map, you'd see a lot more of the planes. Boy, they got quite a few of them. Oh, and they got a Vulcan, too. Very cool. More mile castles, mile castles. I just want to zoom in on a few of these to see if we can see any of the remains. Look at all these. Turret. Nope, that one's right under a building. All right, here's that fort that was in the middle of the trees that I was telling you about. And this is what's left of it. So apparently there was a lot more of that before they built this mansion down here. Castle Steads. But they tore it down to build that. Great. Actually, I don't know if they built it out of the stones or they just wanted to make this part of their garden. Yeah, you can look into that if you want to. Like a little tennis court buried in there. Okay, and there's Walton, the town that was built on top of the wall. Another mile castle out there. More turrets. Nope, can't see anything there. Look at all these. that made it a little bit easier to draw this out in little nav map, because if you can see these, you know they're pretty close to the mall, but there's some stretches where they weren't marked out here either. Where's our next big fort? Okay, we were able to spot this one pretty well because it had a nice ring around it, and there's those gates that you could see over there. And this is the one that was kind of falling off the edge. So the original wall would have been back here somewhere before they moved it over on this side. This is probably the part that was falling off the edge here into the River Irthing. And this is where that Roman bridge was. You can definitely see that in the sim. That was really, really cool, which looked way better than it does here on this map. And this is where the wall really starts, a nice, long, unbroken segment of it here at that Roman bridge. And look, you can even see a watchtower down there. So that'd be at the corner of this field. It's just so tough, as you guys saw when you're flying through there. And then we came out here to where the Magnus Fort is, and there's where the Roman Army Museum is. So again, to spot this one, you'll see it coming up, this little patch of tree sticking out. There's a little building there. That's where the Roman Museum is. And then right off that corner, here's where the Magnus Fort outline would have been. And then here's where we start the wind sill coming through here. Really easy to spot it along that. Oh, a maze? Are you serious? Oh, I should have looked for that. I bet we could have spotted that. And I bet we could see... Yep, you can see the remains of a lot of the turrets and mile castles out here. Look at that. You can see that little raised area right there for that one. What else we got? Yep, you can see for that one too. That's probably one that had that roof structure built over the top of it. And then here's where the Asica, I don't know how to say this, but this one was really easy to spot too because it was right on the corner of this big factory or whatever that is. And there's a little bit of a rim of that. You can see the little gatehouses there. And here's that road I was talking about, the Roman Military Way. So this would have been where their road was running, and then we'll see Military Road, which is the modern road, in a little bit. And can we see any of the Vallum yet? So yep, here's the Vallum running through here, and that's a pretty good distance away at this point. But it may just be because it was going up that hill there. Look at that. You can see it tracing all the way back through here, which I just think is fascinating. Look at that over there too. Really cool. So that explains it. They would have put it that far away just because it was on a cliff or a grade coming all the way down from this cliff back down here. So that makes sense why they wouldn't put it closer. That answers that question. And look at this. Good grief. Very visible there. This is so blurry. I'm not going to try to look for any more of the mile castles. And here's where the Robin Hood tree was. And that's probably it. This is probably an old map. I bet that's it right there. So they cut it down in 2023. Look at that mile castle. That was the one that definitely had a roof on it. There she is, old Robin Hood tree. And then this was a great looking fort up here. The Varcovicium. And this is the one that had some of the modern buildings. Again, looked way, way better in the sim. That's weird because Mapbox usually has pretty high quality images. Almost like they had just taken an amalgamation of other better maps, but not in this area for sure. And then here's where the Mithras temple was. You really couldn't see this fort kind of look like that. And then there's, again, you can't, well, it does kind of look like a little structure, doesn't it? That's where it was. So this is the one that was originally buried. They found it just rooting around out here, dug it out of the ground, and there it was. They built that about 100 years after the fort. And you can kind of spot this one if you're having trouble seeing it. Again, there's a dip here with these trees, and then there's a parking lot right on the side of it right there. And now we're caught up to the modern road, military road running behind it. And there's more of the valleys back there. Boy, I'm losing my voice. That was a long flight. Came on down this way, and then here's the one that had the river crossing. And I don't know if you caught it or not, that little ring right in front of the fort. Look at the size of this house out there by that thing. That just had a totally flat roof. It didn't look anything like that, but you could see this. That is an impressive looking building right there. So here's what it would look like if it didn't have the modern structures. I think they had one here. Here they put a couple modern structures, but you could see a little bit of this stuff around the edge. And then that tiny little line right there is where the bridge was. So as you come over this, you're going to get lost real easy unless you just look up this hill and see the very, very faint outline of the Vallum running up this way. And then you can just follow this road once you catch up to it over here. And then we get down to the bad area. We didn't even get to see this fort. Not that there's all that much to see. But there's a little spot there. I mean, this is all that's left of it. That little square right there is called the Hunnam Fort. If you feel like daring close to this area out here where the bad graphics are. So when I pop back in, I was going to start off up here or at RAF Alston, which is also closed down now. But this is where the photogrammetry starts, and it was still acting a little bit funny, so I hopped out, hopped back in, and we started over here closer to this little fort, which is the first one we saw once we popped back in. Vindobala Fort, which is underneath somebody's big house now. Oh, it's just a farm. Is there anything at all left of that? Maybe some of this stuff here? I don't know. Well, now the map quality is significantly better. And then we just follow this all the way through. This is real easy. You can't see the wall, but you just follow this road all the way into town. And then by this big interchange up here, here's where there's a couple tiny little segments of the wall. Right there was that little piece. So when you see the roundabout, just before it and just after it are the two wall pieces right there. And that's about it for it until you get downtown. I thought this was really interesting. You really can't see much of it in the sim. But look at this. There's a tiny little segment of the Vallum right here with an old bridge going across it right in the middle of that neighborhood. How incredible is that? Oh, and they even called the school Hadrian School. Isn't that amazing, though? So someone just thought to preserve that amidst everything else out here. Crazy. And then here's where the castle is. So to find this one, it can be kind of tough because it's really, really small. If you get close enough, you'll see the big cathedral, which was right up here, St. Nicholas Cathedral. And then you'll look for this thing going across the middle of the river here, which has a swing bridge on it. And if you just go directly back from that, that's where you'll find the castle, right where these rail lines split, which actually look pretty neat in the sim. And then there's the glass house there. That thing's neat looking, and that really cool looking bridge. And then we followed around up here and got to where the fort ended, which looked just like that, thankfully, because this is photogrammetry. Oh, look, they do have one more little wall segment right there. Neat. And then we came on in and put her down over there. I would really like to find out what they're building. Can we see the inside of that shack? So this probably would have been it right here. Shack is a warehouse. I bet they're building some sort of oil pipeline stuff. We're so close to the North Sea here. That wasn't too bad of a landing job. Not dead center, but pretty close. Okay, the last couple things I want to point out to you. This is where the main fort was that was receiving all of the supplies and everything. So it was never along the wall, but they built this as kind of a grain storage place and everything else, and they've cleared it all out. They've excavated a lot of it. Look how good it looks. And they built a big museum and everything out here. And I will put a video for this one in there too because it's so cool, but it just looks so bad in the sim, unfortunately. Which is really too bad because they got some other lighthouses out here, and then up on this point, they got a couple other forts. Look at this. They got some batteries out here. Ooh, the ruins of an old cathedral, too. A castle and priory. But I just bet that probably looks bad because it's right outside the range of the photogrammetry. And look at this. They even got a little amusement park out here. So that's it, guys. I really hope you'll try flying it. Don't get frustrated. Just enjoy the scenery. See where you can follow it. See what you can spot. And it's really, really going to be helpful if you have a second screen and you can look at a little nav map because I just don't think there's any way to do it. You can try loading this up. If you got a plane that'll load up the flight plan, that make it a little bit easier if you can see it on your Garmin. Give it a shot. But that's it, guys. That's Hadrian's Wall. Absolutely loved it. I think my next 5 or 6 videos will probably be super short. That one was a beast, but tons of fun. Can't even believe we got to see that much of it. Just absolutely awesome. And I can't wait to see you all again in the skies. Later.